Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Galatians. So far, we've looked at the introduction to this wonderful little book. Paul is writing to his churches in Galatia, reminding them that the gospel is a gospel of rescue, that Jesus came and gave himself on the cross in order to rescue us, to deliver us from the sins of our life and from the present evil age. The gospel of Jesus is all about salvation. God has rescued us from sin. Now, as Paul begins to get into the heart of what he wants to write to the Galatians about, he tells them right off the bat that what you believe is extremely important. Having the right belief is critical. For you see, some have come among the Galatians with false teaching. And these false beliefs are threatening the life, the spiritual life of the Galatian believers. Let's begin to read at verse 6. We'll read about verses 6 through 9 of chapter 1. Paul says, I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting the one who called you by the grace of Christ and are turning to a different gospel, which is really no gospel at all. Evidently, some people are throwing you into confusion, and they are trying to pervert the gospel of Christ. But even if we, or an angel from heaven, should preach a gospel other than the one we already preached to you, then let them be eternally condemned. As we've already said, so now I say again, if anybody is preaching to you a gospel other than what you accepted, let him be eternally condemned. Now, this is pretty strong language that Paul uses here because the issue is so critical to the faith of these Galatians. Someone has come among them teaching something different than the true gospel of Christ. And they're confused and uncertain and are being swayed by this false teaching. And Paul says what they are teaching is really no gospel at all. Rather, in fact, what they are teaching is a perversion of the true gospel. And I say to you, Paul says, anyone who teaches this kind of untrue gospel, let that person be eternally condemned. Even if that person were an angel from heaven, if such a thing could be, do not believe it. The gospel as you have received it in Jesus is absolutely true. Do not be misled by false teaching. Now, as we go along in the book of Galatians, we're going to see exactly what this false teaching was and why Paul considered it to be a perversion of the gospel and why he was so strong in denouncing it and calling them back to the truth. But for now, we just need to understand that in Paul's mind, it is very important what you believe. That you believe that which is true and that your Christian faith be established in the true nature of the gospel. You know, we've got to get this point because there's a tendency today among many people to say, it really doesn't matter what you believe as long as you believe something sincerely. It doesn't really matter what you believe about God as long as that is your sincere belief. It doesn't really matter what your theology is as long as that's a sincere theology. So you believe what you want to believe and I'll believe what I want to believe, and even if they are opposites, they both can be okay and both can be true. Now, Paul would have no part of that sort of thinking. He says we need to believe the true gospel and we need to fortify ourselves against those who would present us with false teaching. There are many things out there which pretend to be the gospel but are not true. There are false teachings out there and we must steel ourselves against them. It is important to know the heart of the gospel. One of the things that we as Christians need to be firmly established in is a biblical faith. We need to know what the core doctrines of the Christian faith are. We need to hold firmly to those foundational beliefs of Christianity. And we need never be swayed by false teaching and by false doctrine. Just being sincere in your belief is not enough if you believe the wrong thing. Suppose, for example, I was attempting to take some medicine for a sickness I had. But in mistake, I reached for something that actually was not medicine, but was actually poisonous. Now, I might sincerely believe that what I was taking would help me, but that sincerity of belief would not matter. If I took poison, it might end my life. You see, you can sincerely believe something which is wrong, and it's still wrong. So our belief needs to be sincere, but it needs to be placed in the right sorts of things. We need to make sure we understand the core doctrines of the Christian faith. And that's what Paul is saying to the Galatians. I gave you the heart of the gospel. These other teachers are giving you a false teaching, and you need to reject them. So we need to start today with that firm understanding. We need to know what the truth of the gospel is, what it is to have faith in Jesus Christ. We're going to talk about this in the coming sessions. But right now, we just want to be absolutely committed to believing the core doctrines of the Christian faith as the church has held it for 2,000 years. Our faith needs to be absolutely biblically based, biblically founded, and resting in the sure doctrine of the church as we've known it for almost 2,000 years now. Otherwise, we might be led astray by false teachers. Paul says about these false teachers who are among you, you Galatians, be aware of them, fear them. And I say if they teach the wrong gospel, let them be eternally condemned because they threaten your eternal soul. So let us hold to the true gospel of faith in Jesus and Jesus alone. That's what Paul is calling the Galatians to. That's what he's calling us to as well. In the coming sessions, we'll talk about what this false teaching was, and we'll talk about what the heart of true gospel, biblical teaching of the faith truly is. But that'll be in the coming sessions. Hope you have a great day today, and I'll see you next time for our 5-minute Bible study in the book of the Galatians.